This is a reading from the book entitled Purgatory, explained by the Lives and Legends of the Saints by Father F. X. Shoup, S.J. Chapter 14. Pains of Purgatory. Apparition of Foligno. The Dominican Religious of Zamora. The same rigor reveals itself in a more recent apparition, where a religious who died after an exemplary life makes known her sufferings in a manner calculated to inspire all souls with terror. The event took place on November 16, 1859, at Foligno, near Assisi, in Italy. It made a great noise in the country, and besides the visible mark which was seen, an inquiry made in due form by competent authority establishes it as an incontestable fact. There was at the convent of Franciscan tertiaries in Foligno a sister named Teresa Gesta, who had been for many years mistress of novices, and who at the same time had charge of the sacristy of the community. She was born at Bastia in Corsica in 1797, and entered the monastery in the year 1826. Sister Teresa was a model of fervor and charity. "We need not be astonished," said her director, "if God glorifies her by some prodigy after her death." She died suddenly, November the 4th, 1859, of a stroke of apoplexy. 12 days later, on November 16th, a sister named Anna Felicia, who succeeded her in office, went to the sacristy and was about to enter when she heard moans which appeared to come from the interior of the room. Somewhat afraid, she hastened to open the door. There was no one. Again she heard moans, and so distinctly that, notwithstanding her ordinary courage, she felt herself overpowered by fear. "Jesus, Mary," she cried, "what can that be?" She had not finished speaking when she heard a plaintive voice, accompanied with a painful sigh. "Oh, my God, how I suffer! Oh, Dio, che peno tanto!" The sister, stupefied, immediately recognized the voice of poor Sister Teresa. Then the room was filled with a thick smoke, and the spirit of Sister Teresa appeared, moving towards the door, and gliding along by the wall. Having reached the door, she cried aloud, "Behold, a proof of the mercy of God!" Saying these words, she struck the upper panel of the door, and there left the print of her right hand, burnt in the wood, as with a red-hot iron. She then disappeared. Sister Anna Felicia was left half dead with fright. She burst forth into loud cries for help. One of her companions ran, then a second, and finally the whole community. They pressed around her, astonished to find a strong odor of burnt wood. Sister Anna Felicia told what had occurred, and showed them the terrible impression on the door. They instantly recognized the hand of Sister Teresa, which had been remarkably small. Terrified, they took to flight and ran to the choir, where they passed the night in prayer and penance for the departed, and the following morning all received Holy Communion for the repose of her soul. The news spread outside the convent walls, and many communities in the city united their prayers with those of the Franciscans. On the third day, November 18th, Sister Anna Felicia, on going in the evening to her cell, heard herself called by her name, and recognized perfectly the voice of Sister Teresa. At the same instant, a globe of brilliant light appeared before her, illuminating her cell with the brightness of daylight. She then heard Sister Teresa pronounce these words in a joyful and triumphant voice: "I died on a Friday, the day of the Passion, and behold, on a Friday I enter into eternal glory. Be strong to bear the cross, be courageous to suffer, love poverty." Then, adding affectionately, "Adieu, adieu, adieu," she became transfigured, and like a light, white, and dazzling cloud, rose towards heaven and disappeared. During the investigation, which was held immediately, November 23rd, in the presence of a large number of witnesses, the tomb of Sister Teresa was opened, and the impression upon the door was found to correspond exactly with the hand of the deceased. The door, with the burnt print of the hand, adds Monseigneur Ségur, is preserved with great veneration in the convent. The Mother Abbess, witness of the fact, was pleased to show it to me herself. Wishing to assure myself of the perfect exactitude of these details related by Monseigneur Ségur, I wrote to the Bishop of Foligno, He replied by giving me a circumstantial account, perfectly according with the above, and accompanied by a facsimile of the miraculous mark. This narrative explains the cause of the terrible expiation to which Sister Teresa was subjected. After saying, "Ah, how much I suffer! O Dio, che peno tanto!" she added that it was for having, in the exercise of her office of sacristan, transgressed in some points the strict poverty described by the rule. Thus, we see divine justice punishes most severely the slightest faults. It may be here asked why the apparition, when making the mysterious mark on the door, called it a proof of the mercy of God. It is because, in giving us a warning of this kind, God shows us a great mercy. He urges us, in the most efficacious manner, to assist the poor suffering souls, and to be vigilant in our own regard. Whilst speaking of this subject, we may relate a similar instance which happened in Spain, and which caused great rumors in the country. Ferdinand of Castile thus relates it in his History of Saint Dominic, footnote 1, Malvinda, Annal Ord Predic. A Dominican religious led a holy life in his convent at Zamora, a city of the kingdom of Leon. He was united in the bonds of a pious friendship with a Franciscan brother like himself, a man of great virtue. One day, when conversing together on the subject of eternity, they mutually promised that, if it pleased God, the first who died should appear to the other to give him some salutary advice. The friar minor died first, and one day, whilst his friend, the son of Saint Dominic, was preparing the refectory, he appeared to him. After saluting him with respect and affection, he told them that he was among the elect, but that before he could be admitted to the enjoyment of eternal happiness, there remained much to be suffered for an infinity of small faults of which he had not sufficiently repented during his life. "Nothing on earth," he added, "can give an idea of the torments which I endure, and of which God permits me to give you a visible proof." Saying these words, he placed his right hand upon the table of the refectory, and the mark remained impressed upon the charred wood as though it had been applied with a red-hot iron. Such was the lesson which the fervent deceased Franciscan gave to his living friend. It was of profit not only to him, but to all those who came to see the burnt mark, so profoundly significant, for this table became an object of piety which people came from all parts to look upon. It is still to be seen at Zamora, says Father Rossignoli. Footnote 2, Merveille 28. At the time at which I write, footnote 3, towards the middle of the last century. To protect it, the spot has been covered with a sheet of copper. It was preserved until the end of the last century. Since then it has been destroyed during the revolutions, like so many other religious memorials. Chapter 15. Pains of Purgatory. The brother of St. Magdalene de Pazzi, Stanislaus Chokoska, Blessed Catherine de Racconigi. St. Magdalene de Pazzi, in her celebrated vision, where the different prisons of purgatory were shown to her, saw the soul of her brother, who had died after having led a most fervent Christian life. Nevertheless, this soul was detained in suffering for certain faults which it had not sufficiently expiated upon earth. "These," says the saint, "are the most intolerable sufferings, and yet they are endured with joy. Ah, why are they not understood by those who lack the courage to bear their cross here below?" Struck with this frightful spectacle, which she had just contemplated, she ran to her prioress, and casting herself upon her knees, she cried out, "O my dear mother, how terrible are the pangs of purgatory! Never could I have believed it, had not God manifested it to me. And nevertheless, I cannot call them cruel. Rather are they advantageous, since they lead to the ineffable bliss of paradise. To impress this more and more upon our minds, it has pleased God to give certain holy persons a small share in the pains of expiation, like a drop of the bitter cup which the poor souls have to drink, a spark of the fire which consumes them. The historian Bezovius, in his History of Poland, under the date 1598, relates a miraculous event which happened to the Venerable Stanislaus Chokoska, one of the luminaries of the Order of St. Dominic in Poland. Footnote 1. Cf. Rossing, Merveille 67. One day, whilst this religious, full of charity for the departed, recited the rosary, he saw appear near him a soul, all enveloped in flames. As she besought him to have pity on her and to alleviate the intolerable sufferings which the fire of divine justice caused her to endure, the holy man asked her if this fire was more painful than that of earth. "Ah," she cried, "all the fires of earth compared to that of purgatory are like a refreshing breeze. Ignis ali levis, aure locum tenet, sicum ardore meo comparentur." Stanislaus could scarcely believe it. "I wish," he said, "to have a proof. If God will permit, for your relief and for the good of my soul, I consent to suffer a part of your pains." "Alas, you could not do this. Know that no human being could endure such torment and live. However, God will permit you to feel it in a light degree. Stretch forth your hand." Chokoska extended his hand, and the departed let fall a drop of sweat, or at least of a liquid which resembled it. At the same instant the religious uttered a piercing cry and fell fainting to the ground, so frightfully intense was the pain. His brethren ran to the spot and hastened to give him the assistance which his condition required. When restored to consciousness, he related the terrible event which had occurred, and of which they had a visible proof. "Ah, my dear fathers," he continued, "if we knew the severity of the divine chastisements, we should never commit sin, nor should we cease to do penance in this life in order to avoid expiation in the next." Stanislaus was confined to his bed from that moment. He lived 1 year longer in the most cruel suffering caused by his terrible wound. Then, for the last time, exhorting his brethren to remember the rigors of divine justice, he peacefully slept in the Lord. The historian adds that this example reanimated fervor in all the monasteries of that province. We read of a similar fact in the life of Blessed Catherine de Racconigi. Footnote 1, Diario Dominicano, September the 4th, cf. Rossin Merveille 63. One day, when suffering so intensely as to need the assistance of her sisters in religion, she thought of the souls in purgatory, and, to temper the heat of their flames, she offered to God the burning heat of her fever. At that moment, being wrapped in ecstasy, she was conducted in spirit into the place of expiation, where she saw the flames and the braziers in which the souls are purified in great torture. Whilst contemplating, full of compassion, this piteous spectacle, she heard a voice which said to her, "Catherine, in order that you may procure most efficaciously the deliverance of these souls, you shall participate in some manner in their torments." At that same moment a spark detached itself from the fire and settled itself upon her left cheek. The sisters present saw the spark distinctly, and saw also with horror that the face of the sick person was frightfully swollen. She lived several days in this state, and as B. Catherine told her sisters, the suffering caused by that simple spark far surpassed all that she had previously endured in the most painful maladies. Until that time, Catherine had always devoted herself with charity to the relief of the souls in purgatory, but from thenceforward she redoubled her fervor and austerities to hasten their deliverance, because she knew by experience the great need in which they stood of her assistance. Chapter 16. Pains of Purgatory, St. Antoninus and the Religious, Father Rossignoli on a quarter of an hour in Purgatory, Brother Angelicus. That which shows still more the rigor of purgatory is that the shortest period of time there appears to be a very long duration. Everyone knows that days of enjoyment pass quickly and appear short, whilst the time passed in suffering we find very long. Oh, how slowly pass the hours of the night for the poor sick, who spend them in sleeplessness and pain. We may say that the more intense the pain, the longer appears the shortest duration of time. This rule furnishes us with a new means of estimating the sufferings of purgatory. We find in the annals of the Friars Minors, under the year 1285, a fact which is also related by St. Antoninus in his Summa, Part 4, Section 4. A religious man, suffering for a long time from a painful malady, allowed himself to be overcome by discouragement, and entreated God to permit him to die, that he might be released from his pains. He did not think that the prolongation of his sickness was a mercy of God, who wished to spare him more severe suffering. In answer to his prayer, God charged his angel guardian to offer him his choice, either to die immediately and submit to the pains of purgatory for 3 days, or to bear his infirmity, or to bear his sickness for another year, and then go directly to heaven. The sick man, having to choose between 3 days in purgatory and 1 year of suffering upon earth, did not hesitate, but took the 3 days in purgatory. After the lapse of an hour, his angel went to visit him in his sufferings. On seeing him, the poor patient complained that he had been left so long in those torments, and yet, he added, "You promised that I should remain here but 3 days." "How long," asked the angel, "do you think you have already suffered?" "At least for several years," he replied, "and I had to suffer but 3 days." "No," said the angel, "that you have been here only 1 hour." The intensity of the pain deceives you as to the time. It makes an instant appear a day, and an hour years. "Alas, then," said he with a sigh, "I had been very blind and inconsiderate in the choice I have made. Pray God, my good angel, to pardon me, and permit me to return to earth. I am ready to submit to the most cruel maladies, not only for 2 years, but as long as it shall please him. Rather 6 years of horrible sufferings than 1 single hour in this abyss of unutterable agonies." The following is taken from a pious author quoted by Father Rossignoli. Merveille 17. 2 religious of eminent virtue vied with each other in leading a holy life. One of them fell sick, and learned in a vision that he should soon die, that he should be saved, and that he should remain in purgatory only until the first Mass should be celebrated for the repose of his soul. Full of joy at these tidings, he hastened to impart them to his friend, and entreated him not to delay the celebration of the Mass, which was to open heaven to him. He died the following morning, and his holy companion lost no time in celebrating the holy sacrifice. After Mass, whilst he was making his thanksgiving, and still continuing to pray for his departed friend, the latter appeared to him radiant with glory, but in a tone sweetly plaintive he asked why that one Mass of which he stood in need had been so long delayed. "My blessed brother," replied the religious, "I delayed so long, you say? I do not understand you. What, did you not leave me to suffer for more than a year before offering Mass for the repose of my soul?" "Indeed, my dear brother, I commenced Mass immediately after your death. Not a quarter of an hour had elapsed." Then, regarding him with emotion, the blessed soul cried out, "How terrible are those expiatory pains, since they have caused me to mistake minutes for a year. Serve God, my dear brother, with an exact fidelity, in order that you may avoid those chastisements. Farewell! I fly to heaven, where you will soon join me." This severity of divine justice in regard to the most fervent souls is explained by the infinite sanctity of God, who discovers stains in that which appears to us most pure. The Annals of the Order of St. Francis, Chronique des Frères Mines, page 2, I 4, C8, CF Rossignoli, speak of a religious whose eminent sanctity had caused him to be surnamed Angelicus. He died in order of sanctity at the monastery of the Friars Minor in Paris. And one of his brethren in religion, a doctor in theology, persuaded that after a life so perfect he had gone directly to heaven, and that he stood in no need of prayers, omitted to celebrate for him the 3 Masses of obligation which, according to the custom of the Institute, were offered for each departed member. After a few days, whilst he was walking and meditating in a retired spot, the deceased appeared before him, enveloped in flames, and said to him in a mournful voice, "Dear master, I beg of you, have pity upon me. What, Brother Angelicus, do you need my assistance? I am detained in the fires of purgatory, awaiting the fruit of the holy sacrifice which you should have offered 3 times for me." "Beloved brother, I thought you were already in the possession of eternal glory, after a life so fervent and exemplary as yours had been. I could not imagine that there remained any pain to be suffered. Alas! Alas! Replied the departed, no one can believe with what severity God judges and punishes his creatures. His infinite sanctity discovers in our best actions defective spots, imperfections which displease him. He requires us to give an account even to the last farthing. Usque ad novissimum quadrantem.